Hey, what's going on, guys? My name's Brandon, and this is my Train Eldlich deck. I've been working on this for about a week now, and obviously I'm not the first person to try to put these two engines together, but I think I finally came up with something pretty cool. I brought it to a tournament recently to practice and went 5-0, so I will explain some of the choices and really just take this video to kind of explain some of the interactions that I've come up with, and hopefully we can get more people on this, because this deck is ridiculous when you compare it to the other engines you could be throwing in this, like the Infinitrax, the Shaddolls, the Machinas, or the Scraps. This deck really just, it does so much more than all of those decks, and the difference is the Eldlich cards allow you to have all of your most powerful interactions before committing your normal summon. And what I mean by this is if you're playing any of those other engines and you summon your monster, you commit your normal summon, and they hit you with 1 to 2 negates, you're probably not playing after. Whereas this one, you get to bait out 3 to 4 negates under Gamma before you even attempt to summon a monster, or your opponent even knows that you're trying to OTK them. They think you're just playing Eldlich. So let me get into it and I'll explain that. So for the main normal summon, I just ran the 2 Night Express Knight. Being a trained player, this or 1 is usually standard. You generally don't run 3 because it doesn't really gain you much advantage. But going into this, I had no idea that the most often times I would OTK was actually adding him off Switchyard while pitching my Golden 9 traps or Eldlich himself, and then making 2 level 10s that way, and usually going for games. So in the future, I think running 3 of him might actually work out, which is a little weird to say. He's not really my true normal summon, he's more of an extender, but he is a normal summon in worst case scenarios, is the Flying Pegasus. I say that because he can make himself level 10 with Eldlich, but you need graveyard setup to really maximize himself, which is pretty easy in a more pure train build, which I've been playing. But in this, you generally want to summon him off of your Urgent and just start looping him for the OTK for next turn. Because once your opponent read what that does, they basically realize they have 1 turn to try to do something. You also don't want to run 1 as well, because if you open him, he turns off your schedule, which is one of your best going second cards. Then for the other main starter monsters, I run the 2 Golden Lord. 2 is pretty standard in Eldlich decks. I'm pretty new to the Eldlich engine. I only know it because of this deck and the train interactions. But he's one of my best going second cards, just being able to bait a negate under Gamma. You basically want to draw him or use your Eldland to get to him, because if you can pitch him off Switchyard, that's also just a free rank 10 as well for game. I might think about running 3, only in the sense that during the tournament I did not get 1 banished from me in the mirror match, or I didn't get hit with Called by the Grave, and a lot of times I'm usually looping these 2, so if I get 1 banished, it could have come up there. And this deck has a very fine brick ratio. I've noticed, like, even if I'll add 1 monster, I'll just start bricking like crazy, which leads me to the next guys here. These are the last of my engine monsters, literally. 3 Dora Crane and the 1 Super Express. This is just coming from, like, again, being a trained player, usually like 3-3 is the ratio. But he's not Super Express, you only use it for the dump. And honestly, like, I didn't really brick much, but the worst hands I had, the Dora Crane contributed to by having multiples, and there was 1 game I actually opened 2 Dora Crane and the 1 Super Express. So going forward, I think this ratio might be better, and then just adding in the 1 excuse me, Night Express Knight here. But I'm gonna have to try that out. So I went a little unorthodox for the defense here, and I actually was inspired by Pack with his trap deck and the way he used Gamma. So this deck is really useful under Gamma. So the reason I run this, I was running 3 Ash Blossom as well, but I cut them for other cards that I'll explain after. Gamma in this deck is just absolutely ridiculous because it protects all of your best plays. Your Eldlich Send and your Pankratops Destroy are all covered under your Gamma, and the mind games that this adds, like I won so many matches just because game 1 they would see Gamma, I would negate their Ash or their monster, and then game 2 and 3 they would always let my first spell go through, which literally makes the difference between whether I win or lose. And a lot of times I won just because they let me let my Cursed Eldland resolve or my Switchyard resolve. So this is just like incredibly insane. A lot of times too, I would open the driver and the Gamma, and then I would just pitch the driver to kind of fake that I bricked a little bit, and then I could just use them from the grave anyways. And if you're playing against a back row deck and they have no cards in hand, a lot of times I would just use him to make a Nightmare Phoenix, just to, for example, like if they would have one card in hand, which would be an Ash, and then they would set 4, I would just negate the Ash and then go into the Phoenix to pitch one of my Golden Land traps, just to force another negate, which when you have this, excuse me, with your Phoenix or your Schedule or your Pank or your Eldland, that's like 3 or 4 interruptions that they have to stop, and I haven't even showed them really what I'm playing yet, so it worked out really well in that sense. Now, what really makes this deck work, and what's also the hardest to play, I had to really practice this for a while, just because I'm dumb, but the reason you want to go second is it turns this from just an extender into like a main starter or a board breaking card. The thing to note is these both have restrictions. The Eldland's the worst one because it locks you into zombie monsters, whereas the Urgent locks you into machines. You're not usually OTKing with Eldlich anyways, but a lot of times actually the main role this played was summoning my Super Express and my Pegasus, going into my Nightmare Phoenix to fake the back or force the back row, and then I would just I would use the Phoenix to discard my Eldlich engine to get that going for next turn, and then I would just add back my Pegasus to also just gain the OTK as well. So this card, when you use it that way, actually goes +2 instead of just +1, but that's only against a back row deck. Going first, and a lot of times you can just set it and use other cards you have or your Eldlich engrave to add another level 10, and this basically just becomes another set of Switchyards at that point. So like, yeah, this is like my main going second card, but with Pank and Eldlich, they're all going second cards, but it doesn't hurt me too bad going first, unless I open the Pankratops, but you only play the one of anyways. So yeah, there's those. For the one-ofs, I run the One Foolish, the Terraforming, and the Reborn. And this was last second. I cut one of my Ash Blossoms for this, and this actually really came in handy. I won a game because my opponent Ash Blossomed me, which leaves your Eldland on field, so you can't OTK. So what you can do with this is just send your Eldlich to send this to the graveyard to clear your own restrictions. It also makes this a free level 10 if you open it with Urgent, because you can send Eldlich and then set your Urgent and summon him that way to gain a level 10. And he also makes your Pegasus stronger if you open him and no train. The Terraforming is mostly just bait, and the Reborn is just another free level 10 essentially. So for 2-ofs, these are just proxy copies for the test hands. I only used it one time because I'll be honest, my hands were decent enough to where I didn't actually feel like I needed to dig for this. But there was one game where I actually won under the half battle damage limit. He had 4 monsters on field, and I just bumped my lead to 6,000 with like 2 or 3 materials, and I just swung for game and still did over 8,000. So it was mostly just a discard, but in theory it's really good at just helping you get access to both engines. But again, I actually didn't really brick to where I needed to use this, except for the one time, just to try it out. And then finally, what I replaced the other Ash for was the 2 Twin Twisters. And this was actually a really good decision. I wouldn't consider myself a very experienced player yet, so I'm more scared of just unknown floodgates and trap cards that I don't know about, or like back row. So I went more heavy on the back row removal. But this really helped in clearing my own cursed Eldland if I couldn't open Foolish. And it also helps me pop my own urgent schedule to get a level 10 while also getting my Eldlich engine going. So it actually worked really well when you play it that way. So for the traps, I actually played a little bit lower originally, but I learned that all of these monsters can actually be used to make the level 5 Infinitrack River Stormer. So in the grind game, if you open with a bunch of these, which I did a couple times, you can just set them, stop yourself from being OTK'd, and then just rank them up and get your OTK that way, like your level 10 search. And they also just, again, help you grind. You always discard a card during your turn, most of the time, like with your Eldlich effect, with your Nightmare Phoenix. In my case, I did a lot, and with the Switch Yard, you always almost want to discard one of these guys just to start getting your Eldlich going, because that's just a level 10 every turn with your Scarlet. And then the final card, which is just ridiculous in this deck, was Skill Drain. I got really lucky with how often I saw this during the tournament. There was probably, I think, 4 or 5 duels where I was actually able just to skill drain my opponent, dump my Eldlich, and then just send my skill drain on my turn just to get my own effects back. And I did face a Gren Maju player who for some reason played it in like game 2 or 3, and he skill drained me and then could not get over my own lead. So yeah, skill drain with the amount of monsters, like the attack damage you can put out, it's just insane. It makes your Night Express Knight a better normal summon as well. So that's it for the main deck, 40 cards. For the extra, I played 2 Zeus. I used 1 for my prosperity target, but in the grind game, with how long some duels you can push, you can literally go through all of your rank 10 monsters. You could probably run the 3 Gustav Max, but I'll get to that. I run the 2 Leap. Just good for after game 1, or sorry, turn 1, if they stop it the first time. Sometimes they won't see the second one coming back and they'll leave themselves open. And then here we go. I run the 2 Gustav. With how many level 10s you can pump out in a duel, you can probably run 3 of these. If you could run a 4th, you would literally just win so many games by burn damage. But if you're playing a Verte player, I would try 3 of these, because I ran through both of them so many times just to wipe half of their life points, and usually just swing with Eldlich for a game at that point. And then 2 of the best one, definitely Dora. He's just insane, because not only like if you have Eldlich on him as material, you can also just protect a lot of your spells and traps as well, and then send him just to get your Eldlich back to grave. But a lot of the times you'll just use him with your Night Express Knight. You'll use no effects, so you can go into a double send Zeus in case you're worried about, like for example, if they don't negate any of your interactions and you get to Dora, like you get to your rank 10, you want to go into Dora because they're going to be waiting for you to summon him, and if you can just chain his effect, usually you can bait something out that way. Probably the most cuttable is the Sky Palace. I didn't really use him much. He's just kind of there, just a prosperity target. Probably the most clutch. I summoned him 3 times, the River Stormer. You can just add a level 10, and then one game I actually managed to attack a monster, attach a material, and then go into a Zeus, a double material Zeus that way. And then I run the one Omega. I only used him once because every other time I summoned both of the Gamma and the Driver, I ended up going into Nightmare Phoenix. For the links, this is where I might change it out. I run the one Barricade, the Phoenix, the double-headed, the Soldier, and then the Nibiru token. So the BLS is easy to make. He just doesn't really do much. Like, he's got great effects, but there was so many times where I would have preferred Nightmare Cerberus in some situations. So I think going forward, I might replace him with the Cerberus. I didn't summon the Anger Knuckle once, but his grind game with Switchyard, if you pair that with Eldlich, there's no way anyone is going to be outgrinding you. This is probably my most summoned extra deck monster today. This guy came in, like, this guy won me so many games, or at least put me in a position to win a game just for the bait, just how many times I can summon him for free and just force the back row. Again, I'm being a less experienced player, I'm more scared of just the back row than the monsters. And then the Barricade, this guy is just, I really wouldn't cut him, because after turn like 2 and 3, when you go into your Phoenix and you burn your primary disruptions, you can go into Barricade Board Blocker, discard like an Eldlich Trap to get it going, and then add back your Switchyard, and then just get 2 level 10s on the next turn. He can attack under the Urgent, but he's only got 1,000 anyways, so you can also make him off Gamma as well. If you don't draw a turn 1 and you can negate after that, he's really good to summon as well. Now, the side deck is where it really came up today. I never really cared much or learned much how to play my side deck. So the most important cards that I'll talk about for the tournament were the 3 anti-spell and the 3 heat waves. And the reason these are so important, or cards like these, is after game 1, depending on what you show your opponent. For example, if I only draw my trains and I go into Dora, they're gonna make me go first next turn. So you side these 6 in, and they essentially cannot summon, and then they also cannot use their spells, which is fine because all of my best cards, like my Urgent and stuff, have to be set if I'm going first anyways, and my traps. So these won me a lot of games alone. If you can open like both of them, even just one of them, it makes your opponent, like, going into game 3, like, it really just I don't know how to explain it, but I noticed my opponents played incredibly different after they saw these cards, because they really just did not know what to do. And that's where you're gonna find a lot of your wins, is that your opponent won't know. Like, a lot of side decks can't really handle this deck, both sides of it. It really reminds me of the Eldlich synchro version, where you have to be able to outgrind but also out combo it. Basically, they have to kill you in 1 turn, and the traps make it really hard for that not to happen. And then a lot of times they will either just burn themselves out while you just loop your resources and admit defeat, or they will just run out all of their negates and you'll OTK them. So these cards are really important, and it's also very important to side them correctly, because a lot of times you can think you're going to be going first, and then they'll make you go second, and then you open Heat Wave, and you just have a dead card in your hand. So just be careful of that. These are more of my going second cards. Again, if I open my Eldlich engine, and that's all they see, a lot of times they'll make me go first, they'll pick to go first because they think I'm just playing traps, and then you just side out some of your traps and throw these in. In a lot of games too, you can actually just blow them out, and then they're actually just confused because they don't know that you were trying to OTK them the whole time. So that is the deck. Let me know what you think. Thanks.